So the remake for Demon's Souls is finally coming out in 4 or 5 days along with the release of the PS5. And if there's one thing you should know about me, is that my favorite series in the world is the Dark Souls series, but all the Soulsborne games. The State of Play video just came out for Demon's Souls. It had the game director Gavin Moore talking about the design choices and the different elements of the game that he wanted to highlight. Aside from that, there's been about 4 other official videos. There was the initial reveal trailer, there was the first gameplay trailer, the second gameplay trailer, and then a video specifically on the orchestra, and then the State of Play. I'm assuming there's going to be one more before release, probably the launch trailer, as there normally is for games like this. And after seeing all those videos, I wanted to take a little bit of time to react to them and sort of pick apart what's different, what's changed, and sort of what I'm excited for, and a couple things that I'm a little bit less excited for. But overall, my excitement level for this game couldn't be higher. I have it coming on day one, and as long as my PlayStation 5 gets here in time, which it should, if it doesn't, I will cry. You should expect a lot more PlayStation 5 coverage, along with the games I'm getting for it, like Demon's Souls, Godfall, of course the pack-in Astro's Playroom, and I think Bugsnax is coming out on PlayStation Plus for it, so I might make a video on that too. But I'm looking forward to all those games. But for now, let's talk about some of the changes coming to Demon's Souls. Let's start off with the big category, the thing that punches you in the face the moment you see it, and let's talk visuals. Whether you've played the Dark Souls games or not, it's pretty clear that the new Demon's Souls remake is beautiful. There's something about it where the first time I saw it, I felt like this was one of the first games I saw that truly looked next gen. And I think most generations have 1 or 2 games where they really stick out to you. And thankfully, this time around, it's a Souls game. And who would have thought? A beautiful Souls game. If you're not a Dark Souls fan, for the most part, the Dark Souls games, Demon's Souls, they're not really known for their beauty. It's more about the gameplay, the lore, the level design, things like that, whereas the visual fidelity is a little bit secondary. Although I will say the art direction in Bloodborne and Dark Souls as well were great, but in a lot of ways I would not say that they are beautiful. One of the biggest changes I noticed as soon as I started watching the first trailer was that the game was a lot more colorful and vibrant. The original Demon's Souls, Dark Souls, Bloodborne, they all have a really grim and dark and gloomy aesthetic that really comes through in their color palette. Whereas in the remake for Demon's Souls on PS5, it's extremely bright, and it's pretty obvious that this is not as grim and as dark. Although it still maintains a lot of the feel of that game, I can't help but think it looks gorgeous. I know that there's people out there that are going to be upset about this because they want their pure Demon's Souls or Dark Souls experience. But the people at Bluepoint have come out and said that they're adding filters to the game, which will change the look of the game. So they have a classic filter for those of you who want a more classic looking experience that will come with a much darker and more grim color palette if you really want to be depressed while you play the game. Gavin Moore did say if you could, he would love it if you played it with the default filter the way they intended the game to be played, because they've done a great job. It's gorgeous, and I personally will be playing with the default filter on. One other huge difference that's noticeable right away is that the game is running in 60 frames per second, and it's gorgeous. It's smooth, and if you played Demon's Souls or you played Blighttown and Dark Souls, you'll remember that those games on those consoles did not always run at the most consistent frame rate. I will say that this is not a solid locked 60 frames per second. Gavin Moore has stated that it is a targeted 60 frames per second mode with a dynamic resolution up to 4K. And you can see even in the gameplay that they've shown that there are some dips here and there. It's not terrible, but it's not completely locked. So he did say that that was a performance mode, so that also means that there is a secondary performance mode, one that is based on quality. So you have 2 options. One, 4K resolution, not dynamic, locked, and 30 frames per second. And the other is going to be 60 frames a second targeted and a 4K variable resolution. So you'll likely be playing at a slightly smaller resolution or maybe a big time smaller resolution, and it will be upscaling to 4K while you play. I think for a lot of people that might not be playing on a 4K screen, like I'm playing on a 1440p monitor, although PS5 doesn't support 1440p, don't get me started, I'm probably just going to play in the 60 FPS mode. That said, they haven't really detailed if there's going to be other fidelity differences in the quality mode versus the performance mode. If there are major differences, say there's better effects or better reflections or whatever in the quality mode, I will probably choose that, just because I want to see what kind of a beautiful image the PlayStation 5 can put forth. They have stated right off the bat that there will be no ray tracing in Demon's Souls. Some people, that might be really upset for you. To me, it's not a deal breaker. It would have been nice to see, but I'm really happy with how the game looks even without it. They've also updated things like animations for spells, for enemies' attacks, for weapon attacks, and for your character's just general movements. All of them are looking incredibly sharp. One thing I'll talk about a little bit later is that despite animations changing, they're very focused on the game feeling the same. And we'll go into that in a little bit when we talk about gameplay. But for now, let's talk about some more visual stuff. There's a couple things that stood out to me in the first gameplay trailer that I was kind of concerned about, but it seems to have gotten better as time gone on. So in the first trailer, and possibly the second one, the camera angle was a lot more punched in and almost over the shoulder in a way, whereas that is not the normal camera angle placement for a Dark Souls or Demon's Souls game. Generally, the Demon's Souls and Dark Souls camera are straight behind the back and a little bit more pulled back. This one kind of felt almost like the most recent God of War remake camera angle, but it appears that that was just to show off the visual fidelity of the game, and they did a really good job. It looked freaking great. But if you look at the most recent state of play, it has a normal camera angle, and it's also pulled back, and it has a HUD. It's not that. Maybe that's an option, and that could be cool, but for those of us playing, it will be the same style of camera as we had in Dark Souls and Demon's Souls. The thing I have not seen in regards to that camera is that in some areas in Demon's Souls and Dark Souls, the camera was built in such a way that sometimes it was a hindrance, especially in small rooms, particularly in, say, the Valley of Defilement, which we'll talk about, or maybe in Dark Souls like in Blighttown. But we don't know. So we'll see how much of that stuff is maintained. Hopefully they've done a good job to fix that, because those were some of the bad aspects of those games. Let's talk about faces for a second. As they were going through in the most recent state of play, you could see one of the undead hanging out in the hallway, and he had like a recognizably human face, which is crazy. I know that sounds ridiculous, and yes, the hollowed and the undead and the demons in Dark Souls games, they have a face thingy, but I wouldn't say it was like human, really. It just kind of looked like a ghoulish thing. But these have like much more pronounced and human-like features, which I find really interesting. And not only do the undead have recognizable and human-like faces, but so do the characters. Before we move on to gameplay, I want to talk about the character creator, which they have highlighted in a PlayStation blog and shown off in the video, the most recent state of play. The character creator looks insane. If you're familiar with Dark Souls or Demon's Souls and the characters you can create in that game, if you try to make a nice, normal-looking human character, you're not really going to look all that human. So a lot of times people tend to make the most grotesque and ridiculous characters you can make, whether it be Shrek or Frieza, or just whatever monstrosity you can make with like a curved-in face or a giant nose, or whatever it is. In the Demon's Souls remake, they have stated that there are going to be over 16 million permutations for you to make a character, and if you look at these examples, they look recognizably human. Honestly, at first, I was a little taken back because I'm so used to the monstrosities that I would create in Dark Souls, or even if I tried to make a nice, normal-looking person, he would not look nice. These look gorgeous. The way the faces look and the presets are, they almost remind me of Black Desert's character creator, which also had some gorgeous characters. It's really important to note, though, that the game will still have characteristic and feature sliders, so you can make your monstrosities. They're not taking that away from you, but they're giving you the ability to make a beautiful character too. And the reason they're doing that is because they recognize that the game is multiplayer. It has both synchronous and asynchronous multiplayer, and they want you to be able to show off your character, be proud of them, and also connect with your character a bit more. Some people can't connect with a grotesque monster. Who knew? Now let's talk about some gameplay changes. Earlier I mentioned that there would be weapon animation changes, but there's one really important thing to note. They are using original code to maintain the core pillars of the game, or what they believe are the core pillars of the game. One of them being combat. They didn't explicitly state what the other ones were, but you can expect the game will feel as you remember it. They described it as building a modernized engine around these core pillars that remain unchanged. So do not be afraid. The way your character moves and feels and fights, that will feel the same. However, there are still some gameplay changes, some more significant than others. One big one that if they hadn't changed would have felt completely antiquated if you're used to playing the more modern Dark Souls games, is that in the original Demon's Souls, you could only dodge 4 directions. forward, back, side to side. In Dark Souls, you could dodge 8 directions. So you can go forward, back, side to side, but then you can also do the diagonals of all those. So they have brought that style of rolling into Demon Souls, and that's a really good thing. Personally, I didn't remember that it was four-way rolling in Demon Souls. So I probably would have noticed it immediately playing the new one, but having it this way is a really, really good thing. I'm curious if people have an argument against it, but I'm willing to hear you out. Obviously, on a technical level, the power of it being on a more modern console will bring a lot of improvements to things like loading time. If you saw in the State of Play video, it looks like it took about 8 seconds from the Nexus to Lottria, which is pretty damn good. If you're unfamiliar with Demon Souls, but you've played Dark Souls, one of the big differences is that in Demon Souls, you don't have Estus flasks. Instead, there are these consumable items called grass, and there's different levels of grasses. So you can farm them and find them, and you can have as many as you want. It also goes the other way, like when you were farming silver bullets in Bloodborne, you would run out and then have to find and farm them for a while. But the big change that's coming to those is that now they will have weight, and they will have a varying weight depending on how powerful the grass is. So a full moon grass is going to weigh more than a half moon grass. I think that's the order of rarity of those, but you get the point. So more powerful healing item will weigh more in your equipment than a lighter healing item. This also means you're not going to go around and be able to carry 1,000 of them. So this will add some level of balance to the healing system. Although I didn't feel it was totally unbalanced in the first game, so we'll see how this change pans out. I think for some people that might be a big deal. I'm curious to know how it plays out though. If you've not played Demon Souls, but you've maybe heard about it, the one really bizarre system in that game that you probably heard about is world tendency. The short-winded explanation for world tendency is that your actions affected things in the world. So things like killing the boss would lean the tendency towards white, and things like dying would lead it towards black. And this affected the world in various ways. For example, you need a certain level of world tendency in one area to unlock a path. And that path might lead to a really cool set of armor. But if the world tendency isn't at that tendency, you can't go there. It's really bizarre. But they're keeping it in the game, and I am thankful for that, because it's one of the things that made that game so unique. It's such a weird, bizarre, nebulous system, but it was fun to interact with and figure out. But they are changing it in one small way, and that is simply in the UI, it's going to be a little bit easier for you to figure out where you stand, where your character stands, where the world stands, because in the original Demon Souls, it was kind of like a light, and it was hard to tell how bright that light was compared to how bright it needed to be. They're going to try to clarify that a bit, and that's fine. I don't think that being obfuscated the way it was a great thing, so I personally am okay with that change. I know, again, there's going to be purists out there that are like, well, it needs to be this way, but I respect your opinion, but I personally am fine with it. They showed off several iconic areas, but they sort of highlighted 2 in the most recent State of Play, one being the Valley of Defilement. If you're unfamiliar, the Valley of Defilement is sort of a swampy area. It's very dark, it's hard to see, it's claustrophobic. In the remake, it looks way different. It's still dark, it's still somewhat hard to see, but there's some big changes in terms of performance and how it looks visually. Number one, the view distance seems much greater. In the original game, you could barely see 20 feet around you. There was this weird hazy effect, and it made it feel really closed in, and most of the rooms down there were also very tight. And like I mentioned earlier, a camera would bump in against them. Sometimes you couldn't see your character because there were some wood planks in the way, things like that. There was a weird stress in those areas, partially because it was dark and claustrophobic and whatever, but also because the frame rate was so low. You're almost fighting the game to get through them. You were dealing with enemies, you were dealing with claustrophobia, but you're also dealing with the performance. And it made those areas really challenging and in maybe not the most fun way. If you ever played Dark Souls on 360 and you played Blighttown, you kind of know exactly what I mean. It's a lot like that. In the remake though, they're targeting 60 FPS and they're getting pretty darn close, and you can see a whole lot better. And from what I've seen of that area, it doesn't seem like the camera is as much of a big deal, but if they didn't do a full playthrough of it, they just showed some of it. As far as that goes, I do hope that those areas maintain that feel of claustrophobia, but are a little bit less of a technical nightmare to traverse. The other area they showed off was the Tower of Lottria. I fucking hate that place. It's a goddamn nightmare. There are mind flayers there that will eat your face and kill you. It's really hard. It's in the game still. I was hoping they would get rid of it. They didn't. It sucks, but it looks great. They specifically highlighted object density in the Tower of Lottria. I would think that maintains over other areas too, but for right now, we just know that it's in the Tower of Lottria. Personally, I'm not excited to go back to the Tower of Latria, but I will say it looks gorgeous. The Mind Flayers look a lot closer to the ones in like Baldur's Gate than they did in the first one. I'm just that area sucks so much. I'm just not looking forward to it at all. And the last minor change is because they're remaking this game, a lot of the bugs that existed in the original engine will not be retained. So there are some bugs that allow you to fight bosses from behind a fog wall or in complete safety and sort of just cheese the boss. Those will be gone. The cool thing is they do seem aware that there were some fun bugs or some meme-worthy bugs, like they said, that would still be retained in the game. And it's cool that they're at that level of passion and understanding for the game, where they're able to look at like dumb things that players love that maybe shouldn't have been there in the first place, but still think like, okay, we should keep those in the game. They don't affect gameplay too much, but let's take out the more significant ones that let you cheese bosses. I'm fine with that. Some speedrunners might be sad about it, but it'll create new challenges for them. So. And finally, in gameplay changes, the game will feature new weapons, items, and armor. This is great. However, this leads into some of the things I'm not excited about. This is probably the thing I'm least excited about. It is that there's a digital deluxe edition of the Demon's Souls Remaster that has exclusive weapons and armor. And I don't mean you get them first and other people can get them later. I mean that you can only get these items by buying the digital deluxe edition of Demon's Souls Remake. Now, some of the items that come with the digital deluxe are available later in the game to people that buy the regular version, but there are several ones that are exclusive, and that's a huge bummer. For a couple reasons. Number one, if you want your games physical, like personally, I buy most of my games digital nowadays, but for games I have a real reverence for, like Dark Souls, or Demon's Souls in this case, I ordered it physically because I want to have it on my shelf and look at it forever. But there was no option for a deluxe physical edition. It's only digital. On top of that, it's really shitty in a game like Demon's Souls, where a lot of the fun is to find all those weapons, to explore the world, to make new builds around those weapons. It adds replay value to the game. It's such a core part of the experience that locking new items and weapons behind a specific version, it sucks. It's important to note that the ones that are locked to the Digital Deluxe Edition did not exist in the original game. So all the weapons from the original game will still exist in the new remaster, but some of the ones that Bluepoint created will not be coming to all versions of the game. I don't think it will happen, but I hope at some point they make it available through DLC. I wouldn't necessarily want to buy it or make everyone buy it, but at least having it available as an option for people would be nice. And finally, the only other thing I am not looking forward to is the "You Died" screen looks like shit. How does it look so bad? It's an iconic screen. It looks terrible. Hopefully this is fixed in a day one patch. I do not want that "You Died" screen. I want something better. We deserve better. But overall, I could not be more excited for this game. A lot of the changes they're making look fantastic. I think Bluepoint has done an incredible job visually. It seems like they really understand the game. They know what makes it special and what's important. And they're very cautious as to what they're changing and what they're keeping. And so far, everything I've seen, this game looks like everything I could want out of a Demon's Souls remake. And I'm really excited for people that didn't have a PS3 or didn't get to experience that game that generation to be able to play it now. I'm really curious to know what you guys think of the changes that are upcoming, whether you're pissed off about the "You Died" screen as well. Please let me know in the comments, and I'll see you in the next video. Thank you guys.